So, hello, and a very warm welcome. Good afternoon, or good morning, or good evening, or for some of you, good night, wherever you are. This is our second session on Karma Chamé's text about the practice of Chinrezik being the finest of practices, but not only that, being the union of Mahamudra and Mahasandhi. So we had a first session 2 weeks ago. Last week was our monthly Tonglen. And so it was an important session. The first sessions are always important because they give us the context and the overview and the sort of zoom in to where we are. So of course I'm not going to repeat all of it, but if you ever get the time, it's worth a second look. So anyway, today we have to carry on. And before we start exploring the text in detail, we take this very, very precious moment to remind ourselves of our bodhicitta commitment. For many of us, we've taken the vow, we are committed. It's a promise we made to everybody and to ourselves. And for those of you who've not taken that commitment, then anyway, it shows a beautiful and excellent motivation, which is related to the peak, the best of our humanity. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds, from this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, and find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty. And most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of their own future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru om kuri marajite karota keore tejuwati oloyane bishuddha nimale malapan naye kukure kakagrase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shame dawane sawa graha pandanane Negri hitva savabhava pravadina vimukta marapasha savidva buddha mudra anudgatita savamare putsarita parishuddhe biga shantu savamara kamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our head on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness ever sustain us, that the blessings of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you. In our last session, we saw who Karma Chamé was, the times he lived in, and where this particular teaching sits, where it fits in the overall spectrum of Buddha Dharma. And in particular, Karma Chamé's teaching here is in 8 chapters. He calls them 8 songs. And in the last session, we started exploring the first song, and it's called the Song Summarizing the Best Teachings. So there are many, many teachings. If we look technically, the Buddha, they say 84,000 topics, and then there's the 12 sections of Dharma. It's the way the books from the Buddha are categorized in the 12 sections, or the 3 baskets, or Sutra, Tantra. So there are so many teachings. And so in this section, Karma Chamé is telling us the best, and he's sorry for the noises. He's telling us the best, and he knows, because he was a master of Dzogchen, Mahasandhi, if we use the Sanskrit, and a master of Mahamudra, and a great scholar. But more than anything else, he was a ray of light, how can you say, from the other side, a real bodhisattva, Buddha. His life was the shining of the light of truth into our world, and any contact with it it's like looking out of a window. We were talking before this session started about looking out the window and seeing beautiful spring flowers and trees and cherry blossom and all sorts of things. So here we have a window and the light of Karma Chamé's advice shining in. It's very, very precious, because we are newcomers. Dharma's very vast, and we need to find our way, our very best way. So this is his advice. And in the last session, we looked at the first verse, which was telling us the sutras, tantras, various traditions are many and vast, but life's short and our wisdom is limited. It would be hard to cover them all. One may know a lot, but if it's not put into practice, it's like dying of thirst on the banks of a great lake. And it can happen that a common corpse is found in the bed of a great scholar. So this first verse is very much about the meaning and the value of this text. You have to practice. Knowledge is not enough, and there is more knowledge than we could ever absorb in a lifetime. It's like science. There are various branches of science, but nobody could master all of it, learn all of it, from physics to biology to all of the different things. You can only become a specialist in one area. So Dharma is vast, because Dharma is the truth of everything and everybody's karma and all the different worlds and all the different, it's endless. And we could spend our life learning information and piecing the information together more and more, so it makes sense. But then you could just die, and you'd be just like everybody else who dies. The information wouldn't have benefited you. So that first verse we examined last time. We won't spend more time on it, although I'm not sure if I gave you the Tibetan, and traditionally I should give you the Tibetan transmission, although my Tibetan pronunciation's not good. So it's Namo Maha Karunikaye Doju Shunluk Jache Traumayang Setung Sherabjung, we Tachoka, Mangdu Shejang, Namsu Malanga, Jamsoi Dramdu, Komdrir, Shidandra, Kepi Mount, Du Tamal Rojungsi. So that was the first verse. Second verse says the sutra and tantra texts of the words of the scholars and great meditators of India and Tibet all have great blessing, but are difficult for ordinary people to grasp. They're needed for teaching in a monastic college, but for one point in practice, they are of little use. This pointing out instruction for an old lady, that's the title, not the title, but the way he puts it, is more beneficial for your mind than all the others. So there we saw that there's just so many, the same topic, sutras and tantras and texts. And if you are going to become a teacher in a monastic college, so that's usually 6 years of study, I think some places condensed to 3, in some it's 12 years, in some Gelugpa colleges, 12 years of study. If you're going to teach that, then you're going to know so much of the sutras and tantras, and traditionally know a lot by heart. But if you're not going to become a teacher, then they're not very much used to have all that knowledge for one-pointed practice, because one-pointed practice, focused practice, is needed if you are going to change, evolve, awaken, purify yourself, discover the truth of your mind. So this very simple instruction, it's a short text, this one, pointing you to the very essence, is more beneficial for your mind than all of the others. So let me give you the Tibetan of that. Doju Lungdang Jabba Kedrupsung Chinlab Jeyang Palpe Gowaka Drasa Shedra Jena Kolajang Sechi Namsulemna Gopachung Dewe Gemozupsup Sem La Pen. So that's where we got to last time. And this text, I was thinking the other day, and so this is a Ken thought, right? This is not a traditional teaching. But I was thinking, it's a bit like a midlife crisis text. So you get so far through your life, you are whatever it is when you have your midlife crisis, 40, 45, or earlier for some. And you just suddenly stop in your tracks and realize, whoa, what's happened? I'm halfway through my life already. If I have an average lifespan, it's quite interesting. I think I'm reaching the average lifespan in France, for men. So we kind of assume that we've got that. And you think, what happened? What am I doing with my life? What could I be? What do I want to be doing with my life? And then there's a kind of shocking, in the sense of it's a shock, when you kind of review yourself and what happened and where you grew up and how life happened to you, why you ended up doing the job you're doing, why you ended up living in a relationship with the person you're with, and all of that. And you think, do I want to be doing this? Is this what it's all about? And And some people make huge changes. Some Buddhist people make it before a midlife crisis, but I'm thinking of one of the first. She was, in fact, the first nun we had in Samiling, Annie Yeshe. She'd been a racing car driver and top executive. She would go to Brands Hatch and compete and shine. And she'd actually discovered Dharma when she was in India for work, international, whatever it was, marketing or whatever, and met the Karmapa, and that changed everything. But then, so that can be dramatic change when people have a midlife crisis. They leave their partners, they leave their work, they do something they really want to do or they feel will be beneficial to do. So this text is very much like that. And as I was explaining in the last session, Karma Chamé was in Tibet, Buddhism everywhere, religion everywhere, belief everywhere, in so many forms. There was the traditional shamanistic Bonpo religion. There was the first wave of Dharma brought with Guru Rinpoche, almost 1,000 years before Karma Chamé. There were the new traditions, the Kagyu, the Sakyapa, the Kadampa, which was going to become the Gelugpa tradition around that time, and so on. So there was a lot. When in 1959, when Tibet was invaded, there were more than 13,000 monasteries. Roughly 1 in 4 men were monks, monastics. Imagine the USA or France, or where 1 in 4 men are monastics. It's everywhere. So much Dharma, and a lot of it gone wrong. Gone the way religions go, because religions are run by humans. And then Dharma itself becomes a light version, like LITE version, of samsara. So many huge monastic communities and smaller ones. And inside those, people are doing their Buddhist thing. People are studying, people are going to retreat. And there's a lot of sectarianism, a lot of competition, all the things that can go wrong have gone wrong, a little bit wrong, a lot wrong. And Karma Chamé is there, faced with all of that. So this text is his kind of response to say, let's get to the real essence. What's this all about? Being alive, practicing Dharma, the Buddha's teaching. Let's cut away the distractions that could take you all your life and get to the real point of everything. So that's relevant for Karma Chamé, and 4 centuries ago. We're in a different world. We're in a world where Tibetan Dharma, in our case, but Buddhism in general, has come to the world, and we're meeting it as people who grew up in a modern society that mainly wasn't Buddhist. So we have to apply his advice to our reality, as I explained last time, to think what's really going on here. So as we go through these verses, we're looking at basically what can distract us and waste our precious lifetime, because it's not bad. It's not something like wrong, making worldly samsara, but it's something that will waste the time of our life, because we won't be getting to the key point of practice. All the Buddha's teaching is for practice. All these monastic colleges, all the organization of Dharma into 300 books of Shastras that are the main core of Buddhist study material. If we look at Buddha, none of that existed. He walked simply from place to place. He interacted simply, one-on-one to people, gave them the instructions they needed, and their lives changed, and they practiced those instructions. Especially early on, he hadn't given his 45 years of teachings that people could study afterwards, analyze so well as Dharma. It was very direct. The master, the student, direct instructions. So practice is certainly what it's about, not study. The study helps us to practice. It's not wrong. But if we're not practicing, we're not going to change. We're not going to evolve and so on. So in those verses we saw last time, he's already developing this idea. Yes, you can study this, you can study that sutra, that shastra, these teachings, those teachings. But why are you doing that? Are you going to become a teacher who needs to know these things very thoroughly so you can teach them to somebody else? Yes, some people will. Some people will become Dharma teachers, and they do need to study a lot and to study very, very thoroughly. But if not, then, as I said last time, it can become samsara. You just develop a Dharma ego and somebody with a lot of Buddhist knowledge, a lot of Buddhist experience. And did it help? So now we move on to the next verse. All the countless profound teachings of Mahamudra, of Mahasandhi, and so forth. The Mahamudra, Mahasandhi, most people call it Dzogchen, Mahasandhi and so forth, which express with certainty and unerringly each lineage's specificity. These are needed for teaching disciples who will propagate those Dharma lineages. But for practice that really benefits oneself and that strives for the future, the most excellent thing to do is to condense all of those into one practice. Chagsok lasok sabcha pamenam sosoi rangshu machu nepachen chujud lomara pelna kolachang rangdun chime dunye namlenla tamche chiktu drilne nyamlenza. So here he's talking about the two lineages that he knows and that are quite close to each other, Kagyu and Nyingma, in the flavor, in the practice, and so on. They are close cousins, and many of our teachers have both lineages. My teacher, Akon Rinpoche, had both lineages. Many masters do because these are close. And similarly, Sakyapa and Gelugpa lineages, they are quite close cousins, and not so close cousins as with the Kagyu Nyingma teachings. All cousins within the field of teaching Dharma, but he's talking about those two. He's a master of both those lineages. And as I said last time, it's an amazing thing to be a master of two traditions, because only then can you say, they both lead to the same thing. Otherwise it's wishful thinking. So he says, all of the countless profound teachings, and then he gives those two lineages. So the Nyingmapa lineage is the first one to really implant itself in Tibet in the 8th century, mainly through three powerful forces, three people. The king, who had the money and the power over the country, as a sponsor. Santarakshita, as one of the greatest Buddhist scholars of his time, brought from India. And then Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, one of the greatest yogis of his time, also who came from India. The greatest practicer, the greatest scholar, and the money and the power to make it happen. This is so vivid for me. First Dharma center to flourish in Europe, Samiling, and working on donations, tiny amounts of money, working on faith, hoping the money would come in. There the king had the treasury. He said, okay, we need to translate texts. Let's take the 500 brightest children, send them to India to learn Sanskrit and the language, and then they can come back here as translators. He could do that. He was the king. Build Samye Monastery. Build it big. He was a rich, powerful king. So anyway, those three forces together brought the traditions. And so what tradition? Well, it's mainly through Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche. So he traces his tradition back to his guru called Sri Simha, as an Indian teacher. His teacher was Manjusri Mitra, and his teacher was Garak Dorje. So there is this lineage of teachings and methods, the methods that have perpetuated to the present day as the specific meditation techniques of the Nyingmapa tradition. After Guru Rinpoche, there were what the Nyingmapa tradition sees as emanations, later emanations of Guru Rinpoche's key disciples, who discovered, they're called terma, hidden texts, physical texts that have been buried or hidden, or they had mind transmission. And so the Nyingmapa teachings themselves have developed over the last, since the 8th century, through those terma texts, many of them, and traditions of teaching, some of them very famous, like the Bardo teachings they practiced in Tibet, and all the lineage is referred to came from terma, revelations, so not from 8th century, but later on. So there are many teachings, hundreds of them. And so there is the transmission of these teachings, and there's the transmission of the practice of those. They all lead to Buddha nature, to enlightenment in their own way. And then in their own way, but a different set of ways, the Kagyu teachings, which we trace back either to Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa, Gampopa, or back further to Saraha and Manjusri, Saraha and Nagarjuna, and so on. Then we have the 6 yogas, called the 6 yogas. They're not 6 doctrines. In some of the old texts, they put them as doctrines. Doctrines are philosophy, it's thinking. Not doctrines, they're practices. The 6 practices, the 6 yogas, of Naropa. So although they lead to the same enlightenment, to the same Buddha nature, where everything has to lead, there is the truth of us all. Even though that's the case, the methods are different. And to teach the methods, somebody needs to be a master of those methods. This is quite curious, and I have to be careful what I say, because I don't want to be controversial. But there are many lamas who are famous lamas who can pass on the lineage, give the empowerments, give the traditional awakening of the mind to this practice and that practice, either for the Nimapas or for the Kajupas. But when it actually comes to teaching it, you need to have done the practice yourself for many, many years. And there are very few lamas who have done that. Because people are all different. So when they come to do whatever it is, dream yoga, tummo practice on their inner chakras and channels and so on, only someone who spent years, decades, actually doing that will usually be able to deal with people's problems, questions, experience. There are very, very, very few masters who have that practical knowledge and experience. And in some Buddhist traditions, there's a big problem with people who are sent out to teach, and they don't have that long experience or evolved practice enough that's brought them liberation. And so when somebody comes along and they're saying, I'm experiencing this, they've not got a clue. Or I've got this problem. And all they can say is simple party lines, keep doing the practice. Keep doing the practice. It will sort itself out. Have faith. Or if they're really having a big problem, take a rest. And we'll come back to it bit by bit. But they don't really know what's going on. And they don't have the siddhis, the mental powers to know if there's a past life problem involved. People have been there with this practice before, and this came up before in their practice, and it's their main obstacle, or whatever. Or this is this life's work, or better to put that work off to a future life and recenter. They don't know. They don't have the practical experience. And so those who do are very, very precious. So I've been very fortunate, I've met people who have done that. They've lived in retreat, doing the practice, one-pointedly, in isolation, in poverty, like Milarepa, more than 20 years. And they've got it. You go to see them, they've got it. And there are some other very popular lamas online at the moment, and they're really good talkers. But they don't have it. And you can't tell people because they're very popular. They've got tens of thousands of followers or thousands of followers who are devoted, so they're getting something out of it. They're learning, and they think. But if you've met these people, these lamas, then they, how can you say, they're kind, they're good lamas, but they haven't got the mastery, the inner meditation light. You meet a master who's got it, like the 16th Karmapa. There's not one instant of doubt. It's wonderful, it's beautiful. So, anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. So, it says, the profound teachings of each of these lineages, which express in their own way with certainty and no error each lineage's specificity. is particular skills in practice. Like in the Dzogchen teachings, there are various ways of using the eyes, of looking at the sun, the moon, or just using the power of vision, which is very powerful, which brings up inner experiences. Or in Mahamudra, there is the Tummo practice and dream yoga and so on. These are needed, very first words, all the countless profound teachings. These are needed if you are teaching disciples who will propagate the Dharma lineage. If you're going to become a lineage holder and you're going to teach somebody how to do the Dzogchen practices of looking, or the dream yoga or Tummo, you need to know it thoroughly. You need to spend your life becoming an expert. Like somebody becomes a biologist, a microbiologist, or somebody becomes a specialist in science. If you're going to propagate your own lineage authentically, you need that mastery. But if that's not the case, and you're not being destined to be a lineage holder, then for practice that will really benefit you and strive for the future, this means immediately the next life. That's quite imminent. A lifetime goes by so quickly. Talk with old people, very old people, they'll tell you about it. What happened? I've become an old person. I'm the same age as old people. And that's it. You can't go back, and you're already 70, 80, and so on. The next life is very imminent, and the karma of this life is going to shape a lot of it. But not just that, the life after that, the life after that. Many lifetimes into the future. Then, if you want to practice in a way that will really bring benefit, so the next time round is so much better than this time. That's what we mean. Benefit, is a lovely word, bene. Bene means good, beautiful, it's goodness, richness. I want that for myself. I hope you want it for yourself too. Better for everybody. So if you really want to benefit, then we don't need lots and lots and lots and lots of different teachings. We need to focus on what can really help. Condense all of those things into one. So that's verse 3. Now, the next verse kind of develops this. So it says, it may be considered necessary for those maintaining the various schools' doctrines to penetrate precisely and clearly the key meanings of specific Dharma traditions. But it's absolutely vital that those concerned solely with what truly counts for the future, again, to train in being non-sectarian, seeing all as pure. Oh, like I said, Karma Chamé lived in a time which unfortunately was sectarian. He lived in a time when the, politics and religion all mixed up, and religion being the excuse for politics and conquest, and those who conquer wanting to impose their religion on the countries they conquer. So at the time of Karma Chamé is the time when the Mongol armies supported the Kadampa tradition and wanted to impose it, and also wanted to take over Tibet. So they invaded Tibet. Lamas like the Karmapa had to run away from the armies. There was destruction of monasteries, monastic artifacts, killing. And that's when the Dalai Lama tradition was installed, and the Dalai Lamas became kings. The term itself, Dalai Lama, is a Mongolian term. It's not Tibetan. And I remember when I was first in Dharamsala, the Lama said, don't say Dalai Lama. They say it's a Mongolian term, it's not a Tibetan term. So Tibetans call the Dalai Lama Jalwa Rinpoche. And it was a prickly subject, but now the Dalai Lama's become so world famous, nothing to do. Everybody calls him the Dalai Lama, except those in the know who call him still Jalwa Rinpoche. Or if you saw the film, Kundun and so on. But Kundun just means the presence. You could apply it to any Lama. It doesn't particularly mean Dalai Lama. Historically, it's the presence. Ku means body, form. Dun means before the body, in the presence of. So it means the presence. So this sectarianism, where the Kagyu had a lot of power in central Tibet, mainly in the hands of the Shamapa at the time, and so there were wars, religious wars. These days, we don't have Kagyu, Gelugpa, and so on, wars, but there's a lot of marketing to get customers for those traditions in the West. And when the first ones came to the West and they were doing well, then the other traditions started trying to get an equal foothold, let's say. There was a lot of that going on. And I think, and I doesn't want to say bad about anybody, but I think some traditions have been, they're not traditions really, discredited, like the New Kadampa tradition in the UK. If you want to know about it, just Google New Kadampa survivors. But they've done fantastic marketing. They have a lot of money, and they've set up places in so many towns, and they train teachers super fast, so they put in people who are not experienced, or they have done, to good people who come, they hear about loving kindness, compassion, Four Noble Truths, they learn to do Shine meditation, and so what's wrong with them is at the heart of their tradition. It's not on the surface. On the surface, they have, for people who have first come to it, regular Dharma teachings, beautiful teaching about suffering, samsara, precious human life, teaching how to meditate, still your mind, and often quite sincere people who are running the centers. But as people get further in, then it becomes a question of money and worshipping a non-Buddhist entity, and so there have been suicides and lots of trouble. I'm just using that as an example to show there a vicious and calculated wanting influence that's worked. They've got centers everywhere and a lot of trouble. So we don't have Mongol armies trying to, storming storming Estelmuir and Dharma centers, but we've got Dharma vying for interest, all the different traditions, one way or another, some vying more than others, much more marketing. And so they promote themselves. They think they're the best. I mean, that's normal. I mean, you wouldn't stay in a tradition if you didn't think it was the best. If you thought, oh, it's nice here, but down the road they've got the real thing, you go down the road. So it's normal that in religion people think it's the best, but they're promoting themselves as the best. It's been going on ever since the time of Buddha. We've got the authentic Buddhist message. We're the original ones, the pure ones. We're the ones who've got them, and so on. So we are in a world of that, and it's not clear. We don't have anyone to guide us through all of this maze of teaching. So this verse is about this. It's about how can we take care of ourselves in the face of all of that. There's a bit of a catch-22 thing here, because Karma Chamé's message, as I think you're starting to get the feel of, is let's keep it simple. But you can't explain the keeping it simple verse by verse without going into the details. And so you could write a very extensive commentary on each of these verses, which would be quite interesting. And so if we wrote a commentary on this verse, it would focus on the 9 jhanas in Buddhism, which are the 9 main areas into which Buddhism has developed as schools of thought. So they are called the 9 jhanas. Maybe you're familiar with 3 jhanas, Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana. Maybe you've come across that. We're looking at that in more detail and saying, if you're going to become a holder of one of these traditions, then you need to know very much about it. So it's like in science. Again, science is a very, very good parallel. Modern physics, once you're in a certain school of physics who understand the universe or the atom or subatomic particles and all that kind of thing, string theory, quantum physics, all the rest of it, if you belong to this school, then all of the information you've got about wormholes and quarks and goodness knows what has to fit together to make a coherent picture. So once you're in that school, then once you get into the details, this is how you explain that, this is how you explain that. Another modern school of physics who doesn't see it like that will explain the same things in differently. So within a tradition, there has to be coherence. This is the point. It has to fit together. So, for instance, in the 9 jhanas, the first one is the Shravaka jhana. In the Shravaka jhana, there is a material universe out there. There is mind, that's us, the observer, the experiencer, and there's the universe, which is actually made of the tiniest particles and energy. And so for them to explain the Buddha's teaching, the main point is karma, suffering, karma, cause and effect, suffering, liberation, how to get to liberation, the 4 truths, which are central to their teaching. They have to explain how that works, how what we do, driven by our mind, makes the universe come back to us in all of its particles as the people, the places, the reality we're going to be born into next time. It has to explain the Buddha's message in terms of mind and matter as two things, and that has to be coherent through all the Abhidharma teachings and so on. When we come to Mahayana, then there everything's mind. There is no matter that's separate. And so we have to explain the Buddha's message about karma, cause and effect, about suffering, about freedom and so on, in a coherent way where everything's mind, including this vast universe we're experiencing now. It's not a material universe separate from us. It's our mind's experience that we call the universe. So there has to be coherency. That's the point of this verse. If you are going to be delivering your tradition's message and interpretation of what Buddha taught and what Buddha's intention was, then you do need to know all the details of the way your school presents it, if you're going to become a teacher. And you'll think, this is the right way. This is the truth of the matter. They got it wrong. They're good guys, good people, they're Buddhists, but they didn't quite get it right. So we got it right. And of course, if you think they got it right, you become one of them, which happens. So then we look into the 9 yana. We have the Shravaka yana, which is the Hinayana, as most people know it. These days, all that's left of it, although it had within itself 18 different schools, 18 different ways, coherent ways of interpreting the Buddha's teaching and Dhammadhara. But these days we've got Theravada teaching. That's Shravakayana, number 1. Yana number 2 is Pratyeka Buddha Yana. And for those of you who've done some of our other courses, you know what Pratyeka Buddhas are. It's a very special and much more, how can you say it, intelligent way of the Shravakayana for those who have very brilliant analytical minds, and in particular, analytical in understanding karma, cause and effect, causality. So there's the Pratyeka Buddha Yana. So that's the first 2. Together they're called the Hinayana. And then Yana number 3 is Mahayana, the Bodhisattva path. Based on 6 paramita teachings and so on, but then with various schools within it, which each have their own coherent interpretation. Then, so that's 3 yanas we've got. Shravaka, Pratyeka Buddha, Mahayana. The remaining 6, 6 fingers, 6. Okay, the remaining 6 are what we would call Vajrayana. So number 4, 5, and 6, I'm going to give up with fingers. Numbers 4, 5, and 6 are called the Vajrayana paths of yogic asceticism. The Vajrayana paths of yogic asceticism. And so these are Tantra, so you've got the Kriya Tantra, and the Upatantra, and the Mahatantra. So these are, each one is a Tantra, it's a transmission, like a Manjusri Tantra or Tara Tantra. And so there's practice, and then behind the practice there is the blah 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 that goes with it, but it's mainly Tantra, it's practice. And practice of this one with so many arms, more arms, less arms, blue, yellow, pink, rainbow cut, whichever. Each one is a Tantra, but based in a certain view of the universe and the Buddha's teaching. So in other courses we explore that, the difference between the tantras. Kriya means activity tantra. That means a lot of activity. If you've done Nyungne practice, for instance, there's a lot of cleanliness involved. There's a lot of purity, diet, what you do eat, what you don't eat, clothes you wear, washing your feet, and then lots and lots of offerings. Doing, there's lots and lots of doing in the practice. And then there's Upa Tantra, it's called Skillful Means Tantra, where there's a balance between doing stuff, offerings, prostrations, cleanliness, ritual details. And then there is, now we've got number 6, which is Maha Yoga Tantra, which Maha means great yoga tantra, where the emphasis is more on meditation. And of course there's still doing, there's still ritual, there's still prostrations, offerings, that kind of thing, but it takes much more of a background place, and meditation is much more important. Mahayoga Tantra was one of the big things that Guru Rinpoche brought to Tibet, that level of Tantra. So now we've got 4, 5, 6, Kriya, Upa, Maha, and then we've got 3 more, which are the last level of Tantra, which is called Highest Yoga Tantra, Anuttara Yoga Tantra, Highest Yoga Tantra. And so then in there, depending, in the Nimapa tradition, you've got Maha, Anu, and Ati levels of that. You've got Ati Yoga, you've got Maha Yoga, and Anu Yoga levels of it. So different tantras belong to one of those. In the Kagyu teachings, Highest Yoga Tantra has, sorry, it always makes me laugh because it makes me think of Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, but you've got Father Tantra, Mother Tantra, not Little Baby Bear Tantra, but non-dual Tantra. So these more or less correspond. When we get Highest Yoga Tantra, you've got in the Nimapa tradition Maha and Ati, and then you've got Father Tantra, Mother Tantra, non-dual Tantra in the Kagyu traditions. Each one is practice. It's a tantra, it's got a deity, got a particular form, who the deity practice embodies a particular inner yoga mastery, like Tummo, like dream yoga, or whatever it is, and so on. So we have the 9 yanas, but the point is each one within itself has to be coherent. And so the teachings need to be not mixed up. What's the lesson that we can get? So say you're reading Chögyam Trungpa's books. Chögyam Trungpa started off mainly teaching Kagyu teachings. He had a bit of a problem because he was thrown out of the Kagyu teachings at one point by the Karmapa. His insignia as a Kagyu master were taken away. I was in Samiling when he came to get those insignia back. One of the most powerful, hair-raising moments, the energy. Ooh, the energy was extraordinary. He turned up for a few hours with his key people to get the Trungpa insignia back from Akon Rinpoche. So anyway, so then after that, he started teaching, because he wasn't an authorized Kagyu Lama, he started teaching Nimapa. So if you read his teachings, he talks a lot about Ati Yoga and Anu Yoga. And so people read the books and they get some flavor and some instructions from that. But then they're reading his books and they're in a Kagyu center and they're getting other advice from other books, and we're very bright people, we're intelligent, and so on. And these days online there's everything. But so now if we come back to this verse, if you're going to become a teacher of this particular, like Karma Kaju, Nedo Kaju, Drukpa Kaju, the 4 great or the 8 minor schools of Kaju, then you need to get its whole thing coherently, unmixed up, clear, so that then you can teach that on an authentic lineage that came from Tilopa, that came from Garab Dorje, came from this master, is passed on as it ought to be, as they taught it, not mixed up with other things. If you're going to do that, but if you're not going to be that, so that you've given your whole life to this particular lineage mastery, then it's absolutely vital that those concerned solely with the future, next life and the other lives, to train in being non-sectarian, seeing all as pure. So it's the opposite of being sectarian, to understand the beauty of the Buddha's teaching, that Buddha taught everyone, not everyone, each one, according to their mind, according to their karma, according to their capacity, and to have this huge range of teachings that suit different people. It's like these days we see some people really get off on Zen, it works for them. Some people really get off on Theravada, it works for them. Some people, they were getting on very well in the Kaju, but then they met a Lama and that really worked. That Lama was Nimapa, so then that works for them. It's wonderful. This is what Dharma should be about. I remember there was a time in UK Dharma history when there were centres, but nobody from the Mahayana, or especially Vajrayana Tibetan traditions, had a centre in London. There was kind of people looking, but property in London was expensive. It needed for a centre to be so big. They were looking at abandoned fire stations and empty primary schools, all sorts of properties that will come up. And I remember somebody from London coming to Akon Rinpoche saying, it's terrible. The Kalu Rinpoche's people have beat us to it. They've found a property in London. And Rinpoche just laughed. He said, that's wonderful. When we get a property, whenever it happens, then there'll be more choice for people. People, who have an affinity will find their way. He said, the more the better if they're authentic lineages. There were already in London viharas from the Thais, from the Burmese and so on. The Theravada was there. And Zen Center. So the Tibetans were looking for something. So that's politics. And there's a possibility of being sectarian. And so you're either a bag of nerves about your own tradition succeeding and getting the customers and making the headlines. And, if the Sunday Times is doing a colour feature on the centre, why did they go there? Why didn't they come to our centre? We could have told them much more interesting and so on. That kind of thing. That's there these days. And not just in Dharma in the West. It's there in Tibetan Dharma in India. And there's been a lot of problems in the Kagyu tradition with what we call labrangs, the organizations behind lamas supposed to be this, to look after the tulkus, find their reincarnations, look after their property and so on. But there's sometimes been such a competition. It's the opposite of what Dharma should be, but it's very much there. It's very much there. So saying, if you're concerned for your future, don't get caught up in all of that. Understand the beauty of it, as long as the tradition is authentic and they're teaching pure Buddha Dharma, they're teaching about suffering and causes of suffering and so on, then understand people are different. What works for this person is absolutely not going to work for that person. And, and more than that, Karmapas, the Dalai Lama, very often they've sent people back to their birth religion. People have come and they've spent time with Tibetan Buddhism and years, sometimes a long time, and they say, I've still got this in me. I've got such faith in Jesus. If I think of Jesus, something happens. Or if I think of my Jewish roots, it's so deeply rooted. And they say, go back to those. Now you've learned to meditate. Now you've understood more about your mind. Because this is so deeply rooted in you, you will actually evolve much more if you go back and take your newfound knowledge and skills to your Christianity and discover and work with that. It's not the feeling of we lost a customer. It's a feeling of it's wonderful, we could benefit somebody in their Christian journey, in their Jewish journey, in their Hindu journey. I have friends who have gone back to Shiva and Krishna after a nice stay in Buddhism, and especially learning to meditate. It's wonderful. So if you see it like that, it's a huge liberation, because sectarianism is part of samsara, and it gets all mixed up with the wonder of finding your way in a tradition, which certainly I've experienced. I thought how incredible that since the time of Tilopa and Milarepa, this has all been kept alive, and now you're sitting there with your teacher, and exactly, what Marpa taught Milarepa is coming to you through this person sitting in front of you. That's incredible, this Karma Kaju tradition. It's perfect. Well, it's perfect for me, And then somebody else who's gone to Dzogchen master and they're getting Dzogchen teaching, and they're saying, but this is really great. So that wonder and that gratitude, that awakening of the mind, has to be very careful not to get mixed up with sectarianism and thinking that therefore this is better than the other way. And so very often the example that the Buddha gave is that of medicine. He says the teacher, the Buddha, or your guru is like the doctor, you're like the sick person, and the Dharma teaching is like the medicine. Medicine won't work unless you take it, which means you've got to practice. But then, what's the best medicine? There isn't one. The best medicine is the one that corresponds to your sickness just now, and that's going to get you back to balance and to health. So if that's a meager aspirin for you is the best medicine in the world. If it's a $2,000 a pill medicine that's particularly suited to a rare condition you've got, that's the best medicine for you. But because it's $2,000 a pill, doesn't mean that it's the best medicine and everyone should take it. It really is like that. Sometimes all you need is the simplest teaching, but you need to practice it. just like you need to take the medicine. So this broad-minded attitude, and that's what we're going to come to as we go through this text, is to relate it to Chinrezig practice. To practice Chinrezig as the embodiment of all of those. It holds all the 9 yanas. It embodies the richness that's conveyed through all those thousands of teachings. But we keep it simple and see them all as pure. The next one is similar. It's not about the tradition. It's about having one teacher. This one will get us thinking. This one is not so straightforward for me to explain. It is necessary to fixate on one single master as all sufficing. But if that is necessary, if you are to be that person's main spiritual heir. If you're going to be the lineage holder, so that when that master dies, you're next. This actually happened to a friend of mine. It's a friend, we were very good friend, and we were both disciples of Akon Rinpoche, and thriving, doing the foundation practices and so on. And then she met a teacher, Tarap Tulku, in Denmark, and that worked. I mean, that was amazing. And she practiced, became the heir of what he was teaching, and they evolved a Buddhism psychotherapy type of training that Tarap Tulku translated back into Tibetan, and that Dalai Lama thought that it was more than excellent, and that the Gelugpa Rinpoches should study it. And so then Tarap Tulku was teaching it to the Gelugpa Geshes and Rinpoches. And Lena, my friend, was his main disciple. But he died. He died of cancer, and he made her the heir. And so she had to go to a special place. The Tibetan Prime Minister of the time got a property, set it up, and she's there on a throne, and she said to me, "Ken, what do I do? I've got all these geshes and rinpoches. They're coming to me, and they're prostrating when they come in, and we do the prayers together. As I'm giving the talk, you get these little Tibetan old ladies going by the door, and they come creeping in, and they want a blessing on their head." I said, I'm not a holy saintly being. What do I do? What do I do? I said, that's what they want. The old ladies come in, make it really nice. Put your hand on their head, and so they go out and they feel they've really got something. You've been given this method to pass on. That's your specific talent. Don't let it go to your head, but then assume it. Do it with confidence. Do it meaningfully, and with respect for the people you're teaching. So this verse was actually embodied by somebody who, just like me. We're just together, we were there, Samilingas. And you've got someone who's a lineage holder. So it says, if you are to be main spiritual heir, it's necessary to fixate. But if you long for the qualities of experience and realization to arise within you, it's far wiser to combine all the teachers you've met into one, visualized as the Lord of all the Buddha families to whom you supplicate. So this verse is not straightforward, because for some people, if you can do it, making your guru the Buddha, seeing, as we get in Guru Yoga instructions, whatever the guru does as pure and perfect, that will be necessary. It will work for some people. For lots of other people it won't work, because they think it will work. I've seen this many times, where you have to see your guru as perfect. And if they live in proximity to the guru, you can't see somebody as perfect, even though you try so hard, because you see them as a human being, leading a human life. And the way that our mind works, the way that ego works, the way that the four maras work inside us, is to enhance the fault-seeing quality of mind. And you won't be able to see your guru as Buddha all the time. You'll see them, experience them, think of them as a worldly person. And the benefit of seeing them as Buddha will be lost. It's very, very hard. So many masters have said, unless you've got the qualities like Milarepa, if you stay too long next to an enlightened teacher, you'll get burnt. You'll burn up, because you won't be able to see them as perfect, which is the whole point. If you see them as Buddha, you get Buddha's blessing. So this is serious. So let's lighten up a bit and have a story. It's one of these Tibetan anecdotal stories. What do they call it? It may not be true, but it's a teaching story. There's a word for that. I forget it. Anyway, and it's about somebody who gets meditation instruction from the teacher. They go off, they meditate in solitude, and in the end they get all the siddhi, the accomplishment, and so they can fly through space, like we see in some of these old stories. So they fly back through space to the Lama who taught them in incredible gratitude and saying, thank you, I never thought this was in the stories, but it's real. All thanks to you. And then he says, I can fly through space. Come, let's fly together for a bit. And the Lama says, I can't fly. He says, you can fly because you've practiced so hard and you put the instructions in. He said, I'm not there yet. And the student's shocked. He said, but I've been seeing you, supplicating you as Buddha with all the qualities and all the siddhis. He said, that's right, and that's how you got to where you got. But in fact, I'm much lower level, but because you saw me as Buddha, you got the Buddha's blessing. And it says this in Gampopa's teaching. If you see your teacher as a Buddha, you get the Buddha's blessing. You see your teacher as a bodhisattva, you get a bodhisattva's blessing. You see your teacher as an ordinary person, you get an ordinary person's blessing. And you see your teacher as at fault, then the practice has a lot of trouble working. And so I've known people who wanted so much to see their teacher, Akon Rinpoche, whoever it was, as Buddha. They tried to apply the Guru Yoga teachings, but then when they come to a karmic sticking point, they've reached a kind of threshold where it's a battle with an ancient problem that's their karmic problem. Then the power of ego can turn them against the teacher. Sometimes to see a lot of fault and to think, I've been misled, I've chosen the wrong teacher, I've imagined, but all of that was a waste. sometimes it's not so strong as that. It's sort of related. I give another real example, from my own life. Very devoted people to Akon Rinpoche, a couple, and but at one point they wanted to receive a lot of teachings, to go away, set up in another country, practice, live their life, and in fact raise a family. And then the family being a bit raised, they really started thinking, we need to go back to Samiling, to see Akon Rinpoche, to get more instruction. So they drove from the other end of Europe to come back to Samiling to see Akon Rinpoche. They got as far as Scotch Corner, which, if you know the journey to Samiling, is you're almost there. When you get to Scotch Corner, you stop and have a drink, and then within 2 hours, you're in Samiling. When they got to Scotch Corner roundabout, all of a sudden, they had a vision that it was the wrong thing to go. So they cancelled Samiling. And having gone all the way across Europe, they went back. And I talked with Akon Rinpoche. I said, this has happened. They're not coming. They've cancelled. He said, that's so sad. Because they were changing their, not just future in that life, but the next life and everything. It's a bit like railway lines and points and crossings. You come to a place, you can go this way, you can go that way. On a railway line, even though they just diverge a bit, in the end, this one's going to California and that one's going to Canada. It's a determining time. That was the power of ego, the power to give us urges, sometimes for some people visions, guidance. So I caught up with them some years later. They'd sunk back into samsara. The oomph had gone, the magic had gone from their practice. And it was a very, very sad thing. So this ability to see your teacher as pure, it will work for very few. So rather than take that risk, I'm saying is see all the teachers as manifestations of Chinrezig. And whatever comes that's pure Dharma, you're grateful. Chinrezig is teaching you through this one, through that one. And you don't, a load is gone. A real load is taken from your shoulders. In the previous verse, it's the load of sectarianism. In here, it is the load of one teacher, because you see, all these people, all the lineages, the great masters, the Karmapas and Guru Rinpoches, and all of these people, they're all bringing this one message of light and goodness, freeing your mind up from its fixations and so on. It's always the same message, love and kindness to yourself, to everybody. That will always, it won't go wrong. It's like they say honey doesn't rot. More or less everything else rots one way or another with time. Some things rot very quickly. I was clearing out the fridge the other day and there were mushrooms that had grown their own mushrooms, different sorts. They look like spider's webs on the mushrooms. Honey doesn't. They've found honey from the pyramids. It's just as good now. So that way, the sweet and beautiful and pure and clear message of Dharma, all the messages of Buddha, are okay, because your guru is Chinrezig. And Chinrezig is just speaking in many ways. A lot to think about in this verse. I'll give you the Tibetan, then we must stop. Lama chikla chikcho lotepa de buchen chena golakchon. Rana nyamtok yunten jedana dreltok lama tamche chikdudu. Riji dakpora komne soldev zap. Very nice. The last word in Tibetan of that one, zap. Zap. Because so many meanings. It means that's the deepest way to do it. That's the most skillful way to do it. It also means that's the best. That zap at the end of a sentence, it's really nice. It's kind of, this is it. Okay, so we're going to now dedicate, and like last time, we'll use the Chimresic dedication prayer rather than the one we usually use in our courses. We prostrate to the Dhammakaya, union of all the Buddhas of the three times, the one who gazes upon the six kinds of beings, Chimresic, 11-faced and all-pervading like space, most impressive and majestic Amitabha, Om Mani Padme Hum. Through the quintessence of all Dharma in 6 syllables, may a cloud of offering appear. May they be presented to the peerless guide, Chimresic, and to Sakyamuni, king of sages, the crowning glory of all the Sakyas, and to an ocean of Buddhas and their offspring in the 10 directions, and to all the Kagyu Lamas. Om Mani Padme Hum. May the fulfillment of the wishes of the former Buddhas, the completion of the accumulations of the future Buddhas, and the long life prayers of for the present Buddhas all be made manifest through the 6 syllables Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who have a karmic link with me, my father, my mother, my teachers, my relatives and friends, all those who place their hopes in me and rely on me, Protector Chimresic, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing that they may be reborn in Dzogchen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All those who've been my benefactors and asked me not to forget them, all the kind benefactors I promised not to forget, Protector Chimresic, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing that they may be reborn in Dzogchen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the dead for whom lamas have been asked to say prayers, all those who passed away from this life, of whose possessions I received a share, Protector Chimresic, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dzogchen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the beings who live off the goods intended for making representations of the body, speech and mind of all the Buddhas, and those who live from the belongings of lamas or the Sangha, and from ransom obtained through selling sacred images, or from goods offered out of faith, Protector Chimresic, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dzogchen. Om Mani Padme Hum. The dead I've heard about myself, or seen with my own eyes, and all those in the 3 dimensions of conditioned existence who passed away, Protector Chimresic, lead them on the way. Grant them your blessing, they may be reborn in Dzogchen. All those who have been murdered, who died from starvation, who perished on high mountain passes, or were drowned, or those who wander in the bardo, accompanied by much sin and no virtue, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. The most kind mother cow whose milk and yogurt I consume, all the animals whose flesh and blood I have eaten, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All the pack animals overburdened with loads they can hardly bear, those beasts who are beaten while ridden, those that would not budge and had their nose pierced for pulling with a rope, plough animals too, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Those who've committed the 10 unvirtuous actions and the 5 immeasurable actions of no reprieve, or the 5 sins almost as great, all those with such bad karma, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Those in the hells, the craving spirits, animals, jealous semi-gods, gods and humans, all sentient beings in the 3 dimensions of conditioned existence, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. All of those who live in the 4 elements, earth, water, fire and wind, whether in bodily form or formless, small or large, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Rulers, monsters and citizens steeped in corruption, bad humans who are shameless, deceitful and hypocritical, those with ill will in their hearts, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Infinite as all the cosmic systems and the 10 directions, all beings as difficult to reckon as the unfathomed deeps, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Beings who live in each province of this world or anywhere on similar planets under their suns, Protector Chinrezig, lead them on the way and grant them your blessing. They may be reborn in Dewa Chen. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. So thank you. That's it for today. It's over to you for your reflections, comments, questions.
Ken, could I just have a query, please?
Yeah.
I don't believe that, I might have missed it, but I don't think that you gave the Tibetan transmission for the penultimate verse there.
I think I did.
Did you? I think it was verse 4. Maybe I'm just confused.
I missed it as well, Kim.
Yeah, I think I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
First
okay.
4. Sorry to be picky.
No. Here we go. I'm just embarrassed about my Tibetan. Oh, at one point I'd received a transmission from the previous Kalu Rinpoche, and a Lama from Tibet, Tibetan Lama, didn't have it. And he said, "Can you give me the Tibetan transmission?" I said, "Me?" He said, "Yeah." He said, you're one of the few people I know who've got it. And so I had to give him the Tibetan Lung, the transmission, and I could see it was painful to his ears as I was giving it to him. But once we started, there was no stopping. So here we are. It's the penultimate one, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Chulu machol katsam tsungyang wa drupta tempa zenla gomoji chimidunchik kona sampana chori me para dana changnazap. That's it.
Thanks, Ken.
You're welcome.
Your Tibetan sounds very good to me. And I like that it's clear and short.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just runs away.
I've always been it's very funny because I'm known as a Tibetan translator, but I mean, translators text, you research texts, you work with them. But I've also spent a lot of time interpreting for lamas. But it's one way, you see, they speak Tibetan, you hear it, and what comes out your mouth is English. From time to time you have to ask questions, but there that's not the same thing. My Tibetan speaking poor. I never did what many people did, which is to hang out, live with Tibetans for 6 months or a year, just where you have to speak Tibetan all the time. And that way you get all the colloquial. So my spoken Tibetan, because I've only done study, sounds like a sort of 16th century Bible. Hast thou, wert thou, and it makes people laugh. I mean, I've given quite a few Rinpoches a really good laugh with my Tibetan. And then when I actually went to Tibet and talked with common people, it would be like somebody from Shakespeare turned up and started speaking Shakespearean English, and then for some they're told, because Tibetans, they build people up a lot. So when I went there, they said this is like the English Mapa, and stuff like that. And you would say, "Shut up, don't say things like that." And then they look at you like this, the same as I said about my friend Lena. And then when you start speaking, they say he translated Gampopa and all of this, and they think, this guy speaking like this, translator, something not quite right there.
You just have to tell them that your English is much better.
Yeah, I mean, I try to explain, but nobody wants to listen to explanations, they judge by what they hear.
I think you're too hard on yourself.
No,